Spencer, Icarus, Ingham, Bibb, Campbell, Raritan, and Northland. The names of these fighting Coast Guard cutters of World War II resonate again and again in the seagoing heritage and in the strong traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Today, the Coast Guard honors those who have passed before in the more than 200-year history of the service. From the lighthouses built soon after the birth of the United States, through 2 world wars, serving now under the Department of Homeland Security, the men and women of the U.S. Coast Guard have given their aid to those in peril on the water and have at times given their own lives on the oceans and here in Michigan on the Great Lakes.
I started out as a seaman apprentice. And when I came out, I was a commander. And you know, that is something that somebody can achieve. Any one of the person that comes in the Coast Guard right now can achieve something like that. We have people that go to the academy. I was fortunate to get a direct commission. But it's the way people all react to each other. We're a family. It's the biggest family I've ever seen in my life.
Life for me in the Coast Guard started when I went to the Coast Guard Academy. So I had a very early introduction. The Coast Guard Academy, of course, is a 4-year college institution. And after I graduated, I was able to pick and choose kind of on different ships. And my first stop was Kodiak, Alaska. So that started me on a kind of whirlwind trip through almost 22 years that took me from Kodiak, Alaska, literally to the South Pole and back. So my experiences in Coast Guard were everything from small boats, icebreakers, to command of Coast Guard Group Grand Haven. I was the director of auxiliary services in New York City for 3,500 volunteers. I was the aide to the Pacific Area Commander in San Francisco. At the Coast Guard, you never quite know where you're going to end up. So you see a lot of the world, not just a lot of the United States.
In 1790, the service, eventually to be known as the U.S. Lighthouse Service, the Revenue Cutter Service, the Steamboat Inspection Service, the U.S. Life Saving Service, and by 1915, the United States Coast Guard was created. The service is intended to save lives, to enforce laws, to aid navigation, and to help protect the environment. The men and women of the Coast Guard perform military duties, lead search and rescue efforts on the nation's lakes and oceans, and educate the public about boating safety. Today, they help ensure the safety of all persons aboard the more than 14 million boats currently active in American federal waters. When the Coast Guard was officially signed into existence by President Woodrow Wilson in 1915, Michigan was already a long-established home to the service. West Michigan, particularly the Tri-Cities area of Grand Haven, Spring Lake, and Ferrisburg, embraced the Coast Guard, and it was here that many Coast Guard members remained after their service ended.
I'm one of those. I was in the Coast Guard and retired, and all the things that happen here, this festival makes the Coasties at home. It makes a home for them, and when they're here, they really enjoy it. And so when they retire, they come back because the activities are, you know, for the Coast Guard.
You know, I've talked to Coasties, and especially their wives sometimes have a very, very difficult time moving around every 2 or 3, 4 years. And when they come to Grand Haven, we try to help them find a job. We try to help them find housing if they need it. And they appreciate that, and all of a sudden they say, you know, this is where I want to retire.
Well, I think when you retire from the service, you always want to find a place where you fit in and belong. And for me, when I was the Coast Guard commander here in Grand Haven, I met a lot of folks professionally, but they became interesting to me personally, and they took great interest in my family. When I was here, I had a young family of 6 children, and when I arrived, the oldest was 6. and so they went down to infant from there. People took to us for some reason. They became motherly and grandmotherly, and you know, when you grow up with that, that's really difficult to move. So after I transferred from Grand Haven to New York City, although that was really my hometown, it was easy to decide to come back because we felt like we belonged here. And it is Coast Guard City, USA, so it's every Coast Guardsman's hometown, and I felt like it was mine.
In 1935, Grand Haven citizens welcomed the Coast Guard cutter Escanaba, a 165-foot patrol vessel, into its family. The ship and its crew were adopted as honorary citizens. Sadly, World War II intervened and the Escanaba was detailed to convoy duty in the North Atlantic in 1942. She exploded and sank in June of 1943, losing all but 2 crewmen. The citizens of Grand Haven, friends and family of the lost crew, responded by raising money to build a new Escanaba and by introducing a memorial service into their annual Coast Guard Festival in 1944. Today, we especially honor the men of Escanaba, a casualty of war. 103 good men, adopted sons of Grand Haven, sailed from this pier in March of 1942, never to physically return as a ship and crew. While Escanaba was on convoy duty in the North Atlantic, that June night in 1943, in a sudden explosion, 101 of them were lost. 2 survived the explosion and those icy waters which claimed their shipmates. Boatswain's mate, 2nd class Melvin Baldwin of Minnesota, now deceased, and Seaman Raymond O'Malley, Escanaba's only living survivor, and with us today. In 1924, Grand Haven, Michigan began a birthday picnic to honor the local Coast Guard. Now, 80 years later, the festival has grown into a 10-day event with activities for the entire family and is the only such event officially recognized by the Coast Guard. The centerpiece of the festival is the National Memorial Service at Escanaba Park, held each year to honor the men and women who have given their lives in the line of duty with the United States Coast Guard and to commemorate the sinking of the original Escanaba.
The National Memorial Service makes you realize the sacrifices that are sometimes necessary in the Coast Guard. The sinking of the Escanaba was a tragic event that connected Grand Haven to the incident. I've come to know Ray O'Malley, the only survivor of that sinking, and it makes you realize over 100 people lost their lives, and Ray was the only survivor now, and it makes you realize how much they have to sacrifice.
The National Memorial Service is significant for me and many others like me, and so special is because it's a moment of reflection. We're busy in our daily lives, but during one time a year, during the Coast Guard Festival, we have an opportunity to reflect on the past and also on the present.
Memorial service, because of our involvement with the Coast Guard, is very personal for a lot of people in the community. We know people who are in the Coast Guard. We know people who are descendants of the Escanaba crew, and so it becomes a very personal thing.
Every year I look forward to around the 4th of August to come down here and see these people lined up. We put 101 people in the chairs because we lost them, and 2 standing, and then we sit down the other one and we still have 1 alive. And they bring up the roses to put on the wreath at the mast of the Escanaba, and you know, you sit there and watch it and you think, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I mean, people come from all over the world to come and watch this memorial service. And we have a flyover with the helicopters, we have a gun salute, 21 gun salute. I mean, there's this, the whole program that goes through the ships that were here, and all the people that are involved. And by the time you get done, you know, it's just like if you went to a funeral.
It's a time to reflect, and it's a time to honor, and it's a time to realize that life is very precious, and that men and women are willing to give up their lives for the service of their country.
2 words about the memorial service. Number 1, sacrifice, and number 1, honor. And I relate it strictly to when you go to Hawaii and go to the Arizona Memorial. That's exactly what down there at that park is.
The festival also offers a reunion cruise and a dinner where both active and retired coasties share their experiences and their memories. In 1999, Grand Haven itself was given the official title of Coast Guard City, USA, in honor of its great service to the United States Coast Guard.
It's important from the standpoint that we started the memorial service back here in 1947, which is the only national memorial service in the country. So to be dubbed the first Coast Guard city and the only Coast Guard City USA is very important to the community, especially since the support the community has for the Coast Guard being located here and the relationship we've had as a festival over the last 80 years.
It started back when President Ford was in Congress, and he started the ball rolling and finally got it through permanently a few years ago. But it means that we are the official Coast Guard city of the United States. We have the honor of honoring the Coast Guard's birthday every year, and we take pleasure and we take honor in doing that.
Actually, a number of years ago, one of the visiting commandants at a dinner was speaking about how he appreciated what Grand Haven did for the Coast Guard, how he liked coming here and how he had been treated very well. And I think he may have been the one who made this comment about being in communities where the sign on the grass said sailors and dogs keep off the grass. And that wasn't Grand Haven. Grand Haven had a real love for the Coast Guard. And at the end of his remarks, he says, "Surely this must be Coast Guard City, USA."
For years, people in this community always thought that this was Coast Guard City, USA. There was a couple things that made them believe this. There was an admiral here once that stated that on the podium when he made a speech. There was a congressional thing that happened in Washington under Jerry Ford that they thought that it became Coast Guard City, USA. When this was all known, it was not. We then pursued getting it as Coast Guard City, USA, and was finally able to achieve this goal.
For 80 years, the people of Grand Haven have planned this annual celebration of the United States Coast Guard to honor those at home and away on duty. From its beginnings as a simple picnic with a few games, to its current status as the biggest Coast Guard festival in the country, the festival has always been a declaration of respect and honor shown by the residents and governments of Grand Haven and the Tri-Cities.
There's actually cooperation amongst three organizations. We include the City of Grand Haven, the Coast Guard itself, the United States Coast Guard, and the festival. And I liken it to a three-legged stool. It could not exist without the cooperation of these three entities. Obviously, the City of Grand Haven grants us permission to hold events on public property and essentially take over the whole downtown. And with that comes a lot of responsibility too. The other factor is the United States Coast Guard, it costs money to bring in 4 ships, crews for the week. They bring in the helicopters for show, and they also bring in a lot of dignitaries from around the country, some who pay their own way and some are financed by the Coast Guard itself. And then there's the festival, which is an independent organization that coordinates all these activities. But if it weren't for each of the three entities contributing to this, we could not have a festival.
The relationship between the Coast Guard Committee and the Coast Guard has been a very special one for many years. It's really why I became involved with the festival many years ago. They provide a wonderful service for the Great Lakes area, and that is that of life-saving. Matter of fact, the festival's theme this year is the 150 years of life-saving that they have provided. So when the Escanaba, which was the ship that was based here, that was lost in World War II, that basically melded the members of the Coast Guard with the citizens of Grand Haven.
Between the Coast Guard and the people, the city of Grand Haven, we had this wonderful symbiotic relationship.
The Coast Guard has been embraced as an extension of the West Michigan family, and the festival is a perfect demonstration of the close bond between the members of the Coast Guard family and the civilian organization responsible for the Coast Guard's existence. It is because of this positive relationship that the planning and execution of the festival is never a duty, but an honor. The people of Grand Haven make an extraordinary effort throughout the year to honor the men and women of the United States Coast Guard and to include them in the West Michigan community. These efforts culminate each year in the Coast Guard Festival, which showcases the Coast Guard not only to the people of West Michigan, but to the entire nation.
Well, I think it has brought a lot of people to Grand Haven, and from the national level as well as the state level, and even local people get more excited when they know that we've got some national attention. Washington knows where Grand Haven is, and it has come in handy when we've gone after some grants for Coast Guard events and Coast Guard features. And so we think that any attention we can get here, positive attention, is for the best.
We are very proud of Grand Haven. It's a wonderful area to live, to grow up in, to be a part of, and to be a representative of. And the Coast Guard's presence through the years has just made that a very special one.
Well, maybe more important is what it's done for the community. People began to recognize that this is a community that has something special going for it, where all of the citizens pull together, and whatever project they take on, they can do it. When you look at the accomplishments the city has had, take the musical fountain, which is behind us a little bit to my right. This is a project that many cities couldn't accomplish, but this city, the industry and business and the average citizen worked together to put this together. I suspect that Grand Haven is just known through the festival as being that kind of a community.
The main reason that we are so well known now, I think is 2 ways. People who have been here, and when they leave and go somewhere else, up to Alaska, out to California, they talk about it. They talk about this little tiny town on Lake Michigan, and boy, do they do a job on our birthday. We have a wonderful time. That's number one. And number two, the Coast Guard itself. I think the Coast Guard headquarters in Washington has simply embraced us to the point of they love to come here and be part of this.
We've gained a lot of national attention, first of all, starting with the memorial service, and it is the only national memorial service for the Coast Guard, so that's the backbone of why we exist. The second thing that happened was significant was in 1962 when the musical fountain started here in Grand Haven. That got us some national exposure. And the third thing is word of mouth, that the people that have not been here want to come here. The people who have been here talk about coming back again. So there's a lot of word of mouth, and the Coast Guard personnel get transferred every 2 or 3 years, so that word of mouth spreads pretty fast. And so that's another reason why Coast Guard people like to come here. People in West Michigan and from around the Midwest like to come here because it's a nice, great, family-friendly atmosphere, and it's for a good cause.
This national attention raises the profile of the Coast Guard and offers the nation an opportunity to pay its respects to this important branch of the military.
The Coast Guard's future is always going to be bright because the Coast Guard, unlike other military services, don't depend on war for work. We are busy 365 days a year doing a multitude of things. If we are not working in Iraq, we're working in Grand Haven, Muskegon, and Holland. We're working to keep the water clean. We do environmental pollution control. We're working to keep the port safe, if it's a small port or if it's a huge port. We're doing marine inspections. All that is not wartime related. That's what we do every day. And we'll always have recreational boaters who prefer to spend their leisure time out on the water, and we still have commercial traffic on the water that the Coast Guard is the primary rescue source for. So the future of the Coast Guard is bright because we'll always have all those things.
The sinking of the Escanaba, even with 101 souls lost, was neither the only nor the largest tragedy to ever strike the Coast Guard in the line of duty, but it hit the closest to home. Even now, more than 60 years after the sinking, it is an event commemorated each year during the National Memorial Service. This service is only a small measure of the gratitude felt by those on the water and on the shores of Michigan and the United States. Although the state of Michigan borders no ocean, it is home to some of the most dedicated and capable Coast Guard stations in the country, which exist to serve and protect everyone on the Great Lakes and the surrounding areas. On an average day, the Coast Guard will save 10 lives and aid nearly 200 persons in distress. Here in Michigan, in Grand Haven, in Coast Guard City, USA, the civilians, friends, and families honor those who protect them every day and those who have given up their very lives in the line of duty.
God, we have honored the memory of these dear folks. We have honored these fine people, men and women of the United States Coast Guard. We're honored in this region, in these Tri-Cities, for the wonderful opportunity we have to celebrate. Now, God, may this be a time for us in dedication to the service of people, to one another. Thank you, Lord. Bless and protect our dear folks who serve. Protect this nation. And please continue to, God, please bless America. Amen.
Thank you, Captain Leisher. As the Coast Guard Band plays Semper Paratus, the Coast Guard March, the national ensign flying on the Escanaba mast will be two-blocked or hauled to the top of the mast, ending today's service. We hope you'll enjoy the city and the rest of the 2004 Grand Haven Coast Guard Festival. Thank you.
If you would like to purchase a copy of A Coast Guard Tribute, call 1-800-442-2771. The cost is $19.95 for a DVD and $17.95 for a VHS, plus $3 for shipping and handling. Additional charges may apply outside the continental United States.